There we go.
Okay, I think I'll start now. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Welcome to our 12th The Skills Workshop Virtual Careers Fair. For those of you who have not been here before and followed the programme since June, welcome back. To anyone joining for the first time, welcome. I'm your host today, Param Sagu from M&G PLC. And alongside 60 different firms, we've created the Skills Workshop to give you the skills, knowledge and insight you need to prepare for a career within asset management. We're created to help increase application success. All of our sessions are free to register, and the details should be coming up in the chat box now. Over the months of September and October, we are featuring 41 different firms every single day for 1 hour, each telling you what we do, how we hire, and the skills that you need to demonstrate to stand out from other applicants to be successful. It's an extremely competitive world out there, so we hope that what we share with you today will be of huge benefit to you. Today, we're representing M&G PLC, and representing the company today will be myself and Ronan. Ronan will be introducing our firm, talking about what we do, the different areas of our business, and I will be touching on our program and how you can apply. I really do hope that you will find this information helpful with tips and tricks for you to be successful. So in terms of formal introductions, my name is Param Sagu. I am the long-term talent manager at M&G, and my team look after everything regarding graduates and interns. I'm really also pleased to have with me today Ronan Afrifa, who was previously on our commercial graduate scheme and now works in the strategy and corporate development team. This is a quick reminder that this is a webinar, so we won't see your faces, but please use the Q&A function to ask us questions, and we will try our utmost to get through as many of those questions as possible. So without further ado, grab yourself a pen and paper if you'd like to make notes, and we can crack on with tonight's workshop. I'll hand over to Ronan, who will do a quick introduction of himself and then dive into explaining what M&G is and the industry that we operate in, and the work that we do. So I'll hand over to Ronan. Thank you.
Thanks, Param. And yeah, evening, everyone. Thank you for making the time. And as Param said, we really do hope you get a lot out of this. So what I'm going to do now is I'll share the slides that we're going to run through quickly, and then I will give a sort of short minute introduction. So I'm going to rely on Param if you let me know how we're looking. Slides are up. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, yep, so as Param said, my name's Ronan Afrifa. I work in strategy and corporate development. I joined M&G as an intern a couple of years ago, and then after my internship, went back to university, finished that, came back to M&G as a graduate, rotated around the business, and we can talk. Happy to talk more on my experience when we move to Q&A. But then I joined 2 years ago now, the strategy and corporate development team. So yeah, what we basically want to talk to you about today, and what I'm going to try and sort of lay the ground on is take a little step back and say, definitely going to talk about M&G PLC. But what we're going to do before that is a little bit on what a business like ours does generally, and then a step further back to that and say, well, where does it fit in financial services? Because from my experience, when I was a lot younger, and even still now, sort of people are familiar with the phrase financial services, but actually when you start to break it down and define it, it can be sort of a little bit tricky. It's one of those things that you kind of go, I know what it is, but actually you may come unstuck a little bit when you try and define it. So I wouldn't say this is the most professional and expansive definition, but it's my definition. So hopefully you're happy to run with it. So if I move on to the next slide. So this is my really oversimplified version of financial services. So as I'm sort of gonna go with as a definition, I'm gonna call it out in 4 pillars. So the bottom 2, banking and tax and accounting services. Banking is one people tend to be quite familiar with. You've got investment banks who are concerned with helping corporates make sure they've got the right level of finance. They help with things called mergers and acquisitions, so helping facilitate businesses buying other businesses, selling parts of their own, etc. You've got retail banking within that people are quite familiar with. It's your current account where you go, you get your wages paid into it, you use your phone or your your bank card or your phone these days to pay for stuff on it. You've also got business banking within that, which is like accounts for businesses to do similar things, have money paid in, pay money out, get loans, etc. Tax and accounting services, typically sort of the big four is what they do. You might have consulting sat in there, it's helping sure businesses pay the right amount of tax, that their accounts are in order to sit properly, etc., etc. The two pillars of financial services that M&G PLC is concerned with are investment and insurance. So if I go to insurance really quickly, if people might find this obvious, but I find it quite the easiest way to understand insurance is that it's a form of financial protection. So we take phone insurance as a sort of an extended example. A lot of people have phone insurance. You pay X amount each month, maybe a £5 or a tenner. It's called a premium. And what that does is if your phone breaks or you drop it and it needs a repair, your insurance company might then pay that amount of money. It might be hundreds. So what the financial protection you get is you pay a little bit each month, and if a certain event occurs, your insurer may step in and pay that bigger amount, so then you don't have to, and you're protected against paying that. So M&G doesn't do any phone insurance, pet insurance, nothing like that. The area of insurance we're bucketed under is life insurance, but the way to think about it is it's using insurance products as a way to provide savings to people or to support people's savings. So it's not phone insurance, but it's a form of life insurance that is concerned with savings. Then investment, again, is probably one a little bit more straightforward. It's people investing their money, giving it to investment businesses who then on their behalf go and put it into certain products in order to drive returns or other financial goals. And we'll come back to that. So M&G PLC is concerned with the investment and the insurance side. So what exactly are investment or asset managers and sort of investment and savings businesses? So what I've got here is a bit of a who, what, when, where, why to actually say, well, what do people like us do? What do businesses like us do? So in the top left, where we look at clients, that's a bit of the who for. So retail clients, you might hear described, and retail clients are typically individuals. So it could be you or I who invest £10, £50, £100 a month into an asset management firm for them to invest on our behalf. And that could go all the way up to high net worth or ultra high net worth individuals who have what are described as investable assets. So funds available just to invest that are typically over £1 million, £5 million, £10 million. So they're retail customers. So there's obviously a span of what those customer profiles are like. And then you also have the second major bucket, which is institutional clients. So these are, as the name suggests, big institutions. Two of the main categories that these follow that invest in the investment or asset management business are pension funds. So hopefully you're all aware or will certainly become aware soon of what pensions and pension funds are. So it's a retirement savings product whereby you give a bit of your wage each month, goes into a pot, and you can access it in retirement when you're no longer working. And what happens is those pension funds collect all that money, but then they invest it for the long term because you're putting a little bit of money in it now, but you're not going to come back to that till 40 years' time, say. So they invest that money, they give it to investment and asset managers to protect the value of that money, but also to potentially grow it. Another example of a big institutional client in the investment and asset management industry are insurance companies. So again, I mentioned they get that little bit of money or certain amounts of money regularly in premiums, and they might not have to pay it out. Some of it they might have to, but they put those pools of money, they invest it from returns into the investment and asset management industry. And they're just two examples. So the regions, bottom left, where it's a global business, it's a global industry. And I think the reason I put this up there really is because there's an appreciation of the fact that different areas of the world, invest differently. They prefer there's cultural nuances. They prefer different types of investment products in different parts of the world. They invest through different product structures. The way they do business practically in terms of investment is done differently. The route they put money to invest is done differently. That's quite an interesting nuance of our industry and something to consider. If I look in the middle section, it's a bit like, okay, well, how does this work actually? What structures are these put in? One of the most common is mutual funds, whereby people pool a lot of their money. So I mentioned earlier, you and I can put 10, 15, 20 pounds in. Someone else could put 500,000, and then that money's pooled. It's labelled into a certain sort of investment objective, and a professional investor will go away and invest that pool of money in what's called a mutual fund, a sort of a bucket, a collective bucket. But then you also might have other forms where it's a segregated account. So people might have, typically institutions, sometimes might have 500 million or a billion or 150 million to invest, and they get their neat little pocket on their own sometimes where it's an account for themselves that someone invests on their behalf. We look at the top right, okay, well, what is investment? Where does this money go? It's typically in what's called asset classes. So asset classes are really sort of the label or the categorization of where certain investments can go into. So if we look at equities, is one of the examples people are typically more familiar with. So that is stocks and shares, which are used interchangeably, those phrases. And basically it's like owning a part of a company. So you might own stocks in Nike, or you might own stocks in something like Unilever, but these are just big businesses, and you can buy and sell stocks or shares which fall in the bucket of equities. You have real estate is another one which people again are typically quite familiar with. So real estate, you might have residential real estate, so people who buy, develop, renovate big residential buildings where people live, then they sell them on or they rent them out themselves and get the income from that. You also have commercial real estate where people build, develop, manage commercial buildings, so for shops, etc., big commerce businesses to use those, and they can get sort of income from that. So these are an example of when people invest money into this industry, what products are then invested into to try and build outcomes. So if we look at the bottom right, why we all here, it's to drive outcomes for customers and clients. And the reason I use outcomes as opposed to returns is because people want a lot more than just, or increasingly want a lot more than just their money to go from £10 to £20. There's a lot broader considerations when you come in people's financial goals. So one, which is quite a key one in our industry, is around sustainability and ESG. So people are increasingly more concerned about where their money is being invested, not just how much return they get. So we'll touch a little bit more on ESG and sustainability going forward, but I wanted to just give you that sort of overview of where we sit in financial services and kind of what a business like ours generally does. And these are quite high level, and you'll get nuances, specifics in various different forms across the businesses you look at, but just a little bit of a high level one to move us into what we at M&G do. And on this slide, I want to point you to the middle section, which is our purpose. If you look, it's to help manage and grow people's savings, as I've hopefully kind of touched on a little bit before. It's broader than just money turning from A to B. It's about helping it grow, absolutely, but then also sort of managing their savings in the way they want that done. And the second part of that is making the world a little bit better along the way. So I touched a little bit on ESG. I'll touch on it a little bit more coming forward, but we use a phrase that sustainability at M&G is at the heart of everything we do. Sustainability and ESG are central to our business, and that is that second part. It's a little bit more not just about helping manage and grow it, but also putting it into things that can help make the world a better place along the way. We look at our business at a glance. So we start on the far left, might be a little bit different for you, but we start on the far left of the screen. Basically, we look at the history and the timeline. So there's a few key dates we've got in there, and some of the management of our business have said before, we're sort of the newest old business on the London Stock Exchange. And the reason being is that Prudential, which is part of our business, started in the 1800s, yonks ago, and that's still a part of our business. What happened is that and also in the early 1900s, a business called M&G, which they're both separate at the time, set up. So both of those businesses have been operating for sort of over near 100 plus years. And what happened is they were both joined as part of a bigger company, but they were separate within that big company. And then in 2017, they said, okay, why don't we bring these two elements together, still within the big company? And then in 2019, they said the big company owned M&G PLC, demerged, sort of separated from those entities. It's a bit of a tricky route to kind of explain it, but hopefully you follow. And we became our own business. So we listed as M&G PLC in 2019. So we've been this business, M&G PLC, only for sort of coming on 2 years, but all the elements in the history of our business goes back to the 1800s. I spoke a bit about retail customers. We've got over 5 million retail customers that we serve. Spoke a little bit about institutional customers and clients, and we service over 800 of those. Where do we do it? 25 offices across the world, serving 28 markets. How many employees help do that? It's just about 6,000 globally, which is a big business. And then our brand. So this is just on there. I know I spoke a little bit about asset classes. There's sort of a tie to that and different elements of our business, but within M&G PLC, we've got different brands that are out there in the market that are all part of the same sort of family, same corporate, but have different areas of focus. And then how much do we look after for people? 370 billion, which is, it's quite a big number. There's a lot of people there that you have to look after their money. It's important, and to me drives a good sense of purpose, because that is a lot of money for a lot of people. So just a little look at our footprint. Where do we cover in the world? So you see a lot of the money or the assets. You see a phrase called AUM, which stands for assets under management, and AUMA, which stands for assets under management and administration. So sometimes in our industry, you are tasked with managing that money, investing it on behalf of other people, but other times you are tasked with administering it. So not necessarily managing it, but looking after it in a different kind of way is probably the simplest way to describe it. So if you see AUM or AUMA, that's what that describes. So if we look at the money, we manage over 300 billion in the UK, nearing 50 billion in Europe, and then we also have upwards of 15 billion dotted around other areas a bit further afield from here. And you see the little blue dots of the market. So we've got offices in Asia. We've got a lot of offices dotted around Europe and a couple in the UK. We've also got offices in the Americas. We opened our Chicago, New York, Miami offices in the past couple of years. So we're a global business, an international business, manage a lot of money in various forms. And then ESG, coming back to sustainability and ESG, this is the pocket where people might be like, right, heard it a million times, don't tell me it, but other people might not be familiar with it. But I think it is really something that is sort of sweeping our industry and has been for a few years and will continue to do so. So I think it's worth sort of, again, going first principles and explaining what that is. So sustainability and ESG really concerns itself with in the investment industry is making sure that we live and put our money into businesses with a consideration for the effect they have on the world we live in, and whether it's a sustainable world. So if you break down ESG, it stands for environmental, social, and governance. And that really is within investment, to make sure when you're considering investments, you consider also along those lines. So does a business in its day-to-day course, or what this finance we might provide to it, go towards, does it harm or does it improve the environment we live in? Does it provide social impact? And are they well-governed businesses? Are they well-run businesses? So it's elements of that aren't new, but there's a real keenness and a big focus on it, because again, people who give their money to our businesses also have that desired outcome for their money to grow, but also to make the world a little bit better along the way. So that is, again, central to something we believe here at M&G PLC, is we have sustainability at the heart of everything we do. So here's a couple of sort of elements of our business and how they focus on making sure we are a sustainable business and we live in a sustainable world. So in the top left, we've got our corporate, so that the entity that our business is. And one of the targets we have is around diversity and inclusion. So making sure that our business and its leadership is more reflective of society. So increasing targets to increase the amount of women we have as leaders in our business, and increase the ethnicity and the broadness of ethnicity, increasing the amount of ethnic minorities that are also in leadership positions at our business is one of our targets. We've got carbon neutral targets where we aim to be net zero. And then also, if I peel your eyes to the bottom left, there's an area of our business called asset owner. And I won't spend too much time talking about what necessarily that means, but it's an area of our business where there's arguably more flexibility to decide where and how capital or investment might be allocated. And that area of our business allocated £5 billion of capital in an initiative where the team invests in private-owned companies that produce a positive societal impact and change to our world. That's a lot of money that can make a lot of difference to these companies. That's another way that we're keeping sustainability and ESG at the heart of everything we do. And if we look at the asset management side and look at some of the funds and products we have, we've launched a fund called Climate Solutions Fund, where people can invest their money in it, and it's invested in funds that look to sort of positively provide solutions to the climate challenges the world face. And it's about putting a good amount of capital into things that will help support a better world, essentially, or a more sustainable world anyway. So it's a little bit on sustainability and ESG and how it's at the heart of everything we at M&G do. So If I peel on to the next one, and this is a little bit about our investment management function. And basically, if I start from the bottom, business management, it's about helping. These are the roles that also help facilitate how this business can run. So they help with projects and change projects to make sure the business has everything they need. They're aware of sort of new systems that they need coming up, and they're implemented in the right way. This is an example of it. We've got the next strip along the side, research and sustainable investing. So as I mentioned, it is critical sustainable investing. And when you put money to work and invest it in people, you need to know with a consideration along ESG, whether they are good and score highly in terms of what they do in respect to ESG, or whether they perhaps score poorly. So the research function, who help analyze companies generally, financial considerations and non-financial considerations, also have a look at sort of whether they're sustainable companies and how they score on an ESG basis. And then we have a set of the asset classes where you might segment some of the investment in our business. So I spoke a little bit earlier about equities. You've also got cash and currency, multi-asset, which is a mixture of different buckets of asset classes. You've got public fixed income. Try not to spend too much time on it, but fixed income, for example, as the name suggests, is you invest in financial products which have a fixed rate of return that you're aware of. So an example might be you invest in something called a bond, where you lend someone money, essentially. They agree to pay you a rate of interest over a period of time, and then they hand you back the money you've lent them, again, at a agreed period of time. So that is fixed. You know that you should be getting X amount of interest each year, and then your money back at a certain date is why it's described as fixed income. There's various products that match that, or various investments where you can match that profile to. Then you've got something called private and alternative assets is another bucket. Private because there's public stuff where you can just go and buy shares that are publicly traded, so anyone can log on to whatever platform or trading arena they can access, and they can buy these. Or there's private deals which aren't in the public domain. Some of these are, for example, real estate. So again, when people want to go and buy a huge bit of land or buy a huge development building, there's not really sort of a public forum where someone can say, okay, auction it. It's usually done privately, where people will sort of agree or sort of tout for the business and try and negotiate to get deals. Infrastructure is another one, which are typically sort of like big bridges or phone lines or internet lines. Again, there's investment that helps fund these big projects, and there's areas of our business that are also involved in that. And the top bit, basically, retail, wholesale, institutional, internal, breaks out who M&G's main sort of client buckets are. So I spoke about retail and institutional earlier. When you also look at wholesale really largely considers itself with retail clients, but done on a wholesale basis. So rather than sort of individuals, wholesale is a different route to market where those individuals go through first, the intermediaries, if you will. And internal is basically, we have the asset owner I touched on earlier, is what we class as an internal client at M&G. So they decide where money goes, but they're also basically a client that also sits within our business, which is a little nuance that our business and some of the businesses like ours have. So the final slide I'll speak on is that was about investment, which is obviously a key part of an investment business. No surprises there. But I really like this slide because it shows that there's a lot broader set of people involved and a lot broader set of roles that really make it happen. So this set that you see on the screen and others that you can't all fit there, that are all a part of making sure we help manage and grow people's savings and help the world and help make the world a little better along the way. So it really is a team effort. So the fund managers, etc., that I mentioned, who would be the investment managers, are on the top left. But equally, they're supported by product designers, so people who help make sure that the products of which people invest in are right for them. They're available in the right countries for people who need them. You've also got distribution or sales who actually help to speak to clients and customers and let them know how M&G can help them and help facilitate that. You've also got accountants, lawyers, auditors, app developers, web developers. So it really is a broad shop of roles available in our business. And yeah, I think it's important to recognize that there's a place for people across the board, different backgrounds, different intellectual backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds. There are roles for everyone across the business. So that's something I personally personally like to stress. So that really is what I wanted to speak about here. Hopefully I've laid out a little bit on what we do as a business, where we sit within the industry. There's a lot to take in there. So please heckle me in the Q&A, and hopefully I can provide some useful answers to that. But I'll hand back now to Karen, who will speak specifically about the routes to actually enter the business across the sort of internship and graduate space. So just let me know when I should be moving on, Karen.
Thanks, Ronan. And I loved how you touched on all the other different areas that support the asset management business. And I think those are really critical to making our business a success. And all these clogs in these wheels work together holistically to sort of, ensure that we are successful as an organization. So I want to take some time just to quickly talk about our schemes and our opportunities, to give you an overview of what early careers opportunities we have within M&G. So as Ronan mentioned, the investment side of the business is the front office asset management part of the organization, and as he covered, we have opportunities within the investment scheme, and you will have the opportunity to work in and learn about various parts of the investment side of the business by rotating through different asset classes. All these roles are predominantly London based. Then we also offer technology schemes, and these are based across London, Edinburgh and Stirling, and they span across investments, IT teams, customer technology, and enterprise security, which is a real growing area in terms of making sure that our business is safe from cybercrime. And then we also have opportunities within customer and innovation. So again, this is the key parts of components of the organization that support us in being successful around marketing, digital, the wealth management side of our organization, and some of the roles within M&G Investments that work very closely with our front office investment teams. And these roles are based across London, Edinburgh and Bath. Spanning across all three schemes, you will receive relevant training and induction as part of the program. It's a great opportunity for you to learn. We call the graduate scheme a learning program because it's rotational. You have the opportunity to network, you have the opportunity to broaden your exposure and really build your skill set and knowledge. And in each rotation, you will learn and deliver value and broaden your network. In terms of supporting you whilst you're on the scheme, we have a vast graduate network across the organisation that you will be linked with. We also work heavily with our graduates and mentors across the organisation to mentor and buddy new cohorts. As you move throughout the scheme as well, we've introduced the role of a professional development manager. So we recognise that as you move from one rotation to the next, your line manager would change, but your professional development manager is your one consistent point of contact as you rotate throughout the scheme, who is there really to give you advice on your rotations and ultimately what full-time role you want to go into after you've completed the scheme. We have training and development in terms of a robust and thorough induction program that will get everyone up to speed in terms of understanding our industry. And then for the investment scheme, our graduates complete the IMC and the CFA level 1. And then for our technology and customer and innovation schemes, they complete lots of qualifications that are relevant to the roles that they're rotating in. If you could go to the next slide, please, Ronan. So in terms of how these are actually structured, and I know that a couple of questions have already come in regarding internships versus graduate schemes. So these are the two core programs that we run. The internship is an 8-week program over the summer period, and it's aimed for penultimate year undergraduates, or if you've graduated and you're going on to do a 1-year master's. The date of our internship intake for next year will be the 20th of June, and it will be 8 weeks where you have the opportunity to work in one team. There are lots of networking and learning opportunities across the cohort. And at the end of the internship, you'll take part in an assessment that will determine whether you are successful in joining the graduate scheme, which will be the 2023 intake of graduates. So at the moment, we are currently recruiting for internship roles at the moment. But what I would say is that I would keep checking on the website because we might be able to open for a couple of graduate roles that will be starting in September 2022. So if you are interested in a graduate position and you've already completed your education, keep an eye on our website. And if anything changes, those opportunities will pop up in the near future. At the moment, however, we are only accepting applications for our internship, which, as I said, will then convert into 2023 graduate scheme places. So in terms of the graduate scheme itself, it's 18 to 20 months, 18 to 24 months in duration. It's a permanent role, but you're rotating across the organization for that period of 18 to 24 months. We look for candidates from any degree subject matter background. So it doesn't have to be finance related. There's lots of training and support to get you up to speed, regardless of your background. All we look for is a minimum 2-1 achieved or predicted as part of your education. You have 6-month rotations across relevant teams within your scheme, and you have the option for a choice rotation, and then are supported by our team in securing a role after the scheme has completed. So that's a rough overview of the schemes itself. I'm conscious of time, so we'll go on to the next slide and then we'll open for questions. So in terms of our recruitment process, it should be fairly simple. We've tried to keep it as clear and minimal as possible. At the moment, everything's been done virtually due to COVID. So the first step is to complete an online application form. It takes roughly around 20 minutes to complete. If you meet our minimum requirements, then you'll be moved through to psychometric ability testing. And then if you're successful from that stage, you will be moved on to a video interview, which is also remote. And then the final stage of the process, which we were running last year, are virtual assessment centres. So a 4-step process. We're open for applications for our internship opportunities, and our applications will close on the 31st of October. If you could go to the next slide, please. So a lot of people ask, well, what are we looking for as an organization? And I think this is a really great question. You know, as I mentioned, we've got 3 streams that we recruit for across investment, technology, and customer and innovation. And I've just called out a couple of things that come to mind in terms of things that we look for in our graduates and interns. I think, you know, we don't expect you to come with any relevant experience, but what we do expect you to come with is that real curiosity to learn, to show that you want to learn about the industry or the area of the business that you would be rotating in, to ask good questions, to really listen to things and take things on board, and show that you're learning. You know, some of the roles are a little bit more technical and analytical than others. So, you know, have a look at the range of opportunities that we've got open across these different schemes, and, you know, look at the skill sets that we say that we require for each of those schemes, and think about what might suit you best, and then apply for that role, dependent on the skill sets that we're looking for. But, you know, really just, you know, sort of bringing your authentic self to the assessment. You know, don't just be the best version of yourself. And even if you don't have any specific experience or work experience, look at the things that you've done at university or the life experiences that you've had, and list those down and think about what skills you've gained from your life experiences or your experiences throughout education. And I'm sure you'll come up with lots of great examples. So preparing good examples in advance of your assessment, I think, is always key as well. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of talk about well-being at M&G, especially with the difficult year and a half that we've had with everything going on with the pandemic. And, you know, I just wanted to call out that M&G, you know, there's a huge amount of support there. We have a hub which has got a wealth of material on it in terms of how to support your well-being. We have, you know, great sort of, things on there, such as online musical classes and meditation, Pilates, Zumba, and yoga. And then we've also got our D&I networks and communities across our pillars of diversity that, you know, help people connect across the organization. We have access to virtual GP service and 2 volunteering days per year, so you can get involved in what's going on in your community and really give back. The next slide, please. And just very quickly on how we're working at the moment. Yes, we're all working remotely. We've been given budget to purchase equipment and such as desks and chairs to help us work from home more effectively. But we hope to be back into the office soon. But it's been a good transition in terms of being able to work remotely, and a great IT team that have enabled us to do that. Okay, so I'm just conscious of time, so I do want to make some time for questions. So maybe, Ronan, if we could close the slides and I'll have a look at what's come in there. So there's a question around spring week applications might open. So we don't traditionally run a spring week at M&G, but if we are going to be offering such opportunities, I would just keep an eye on our careers website. We normally have things like insight days, so details of that will be on our website shortly, and they will be taking place in October. So yeah, I would just check on the website and have a look, and then once those are on there, then you can sign up for those. So I've already answered the question about graduate positions, so I hope that's clear. So Ronan, I'll hand over to you this one in terms of work-life balance and typical working hours for juniors.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So for me, and I mean, yeah, I truly want to say this with as much sincerity as possible, because I feel like there was a great understanding of work-life balance. And to my mind, that goes, I've not experienced different levels of the firm. I'm still fairly junior, but to my experience, that should be across the firm, and it's certainly what is discussed across the firm or promoted when we look at things like well-being, for example, is that is what should be there. So I found it was really sort of practical. And there's one thing that definitely isn't, is the whole idea of needing to stay at your desk for longer than you need to. If you've done your work and that's the reason we're trying to go home, then do that. There's no need to say, well, it's not 8 p.m. or 7 p.m. yet, so I shouldn't have left. That I find would just be ridiculous, and a lot of people around the business would find that exactly the same way. So there's a keenness on work-life balance and making the most of your time away from work. Something that I would say also is that in what's happened over the past 18 months is that us, as well as many other firms, are moving towards different ways of working. So there's a lot more flexibility around working. So, for example, we won't be expected to be in the office anymore for 5 days. We'll have more flexibility so we can be at home. And Pam mentioned about us being given the facilities to work at home, desks, etc., and computer software, so we can work at home, and that helps people's lives be more flexible. Also, stuff like working hours. If I felt I worked better when I started at 10 and finished at 7 or 8 in the evening, or whatever time worked, I could have a conversation with my manager, and so long as it worked for the rest of the team, then that could be made to happen. There's other people who have kids, for example, in the business, and have to pick up their kids in the morning, or drop off their kids in the morning and pick them up in the evenings, so they won't be working for that period of time. And that's happily accepted. You know, people's lives are, this is my comment, I think people's lives are bigger than work, and I'd like to think that that's echoed, certainly in my experience at M&G.
Thank you, Ronan. So another question, does M&G offer work placement years offering to postgrad students? Unfortunately, we don't offer work placements. We did a number of years ago, but we don't have that at the moment. So it's just the internship and then the graduate positions. So yeah, sorry about that. We don't currently offer work placements. Spring Insight courses, we will have Insight Days. So we will have Insight Days in October, which will be up on the website shortly. And then we will do Spring Insight Days as well. So again, look out on the website for those, for the details for those and how to register. A couple of questions that have come in regarding visas. So yes, we do sponsor students from outside the UK. So yeah, that's absolutely fine. If you're an international student, you absolutely can apply. And if you're successful, then we will sponsor your eligibility to work in the UK. There's a really lovely question that's come in. What's the happiest moment that you remembered when you are working in the company? Ronan, would you like to take that?
Yeah, I'll say it. I think it's a nice question, lovely question. I'd struggle to say one moment. I think I could pick out some moments. So I really enjoyed my grad training. So again, as I mentioned, I was an intern and spent a little bit of time at M&G prior to joining on the grad scheme. So I was more familiar, I won't say completely familiar, but more familiar with the business and some people there. But naturally you join and there's a sense of nervousness as anyone would join in a new environment. But I joined with a group of peers, we went through training together, and I think there was just sort of a lot of times where you'd only known each other for a couple of weeks, but like really, really great friendships were formed. And I'd still class them as that now. I've got great friendships in the business, but also particularly on the grad scheme. So I think my grad training was definitely one of the happy moments. And there's been a lot more, but I also feel like when I started in this team I've joined now, it got to a point probably a year after I started where I thought I feel really comfortable with this group of people and I really trust them and I think they're great, inspiring people and keen to help me develop. And I also had started to build a little bit more understanding, comfortability, good foundations in my role, and sort of looked up at a point and thought, yeah, I'm glad I'm where I'm at with the people I'm working with. And that was another happy moment for me. Do you have any you want to put in the ring, Param?
I love working with the graduates, and I think I'm always super happy when we have the first day of our new intakes. Really great to see them joining the firm, so much enthusiasm and energy that they bring to the table, their curiosity, their diversity of thought and challenging the status quo. And you know, other highlights are actually when I see graduates and at the end of the program rolling into their permanent roles. And I'll give Ronan as an example. I feel so proud of him. You know, he was on our commercial scheme and I feel like he's doing so well. So it's great to see our ex-graduates being really successful within the organization, and it makes me really proud of them. There's another question that's come up. Does one have to have an internship or work experience for the graduate scheme? Absolutely not. We don't look at that as a requirement for eligibility. As I mentioned, there's a lot of training there in place to help people from all different backgrounds, subject matter backgrounds and levels of knowledge and experience of the industry to really get up to speed. And our assessment is strength-based and based on looking at people's potential to be successful within a role. So, you know, if you've got that curiosity and that potential, you don't have to have specific internships or work experience. But as I said, you know, any sort of life experience that you've got, if you can bring examples of that to the table, I think that's what really counts, not specific, you know, industry or specific work experience type. So I hope that helps answer your question. In terms of master's students, a lot of our interns do our internship and then go on to complete a one-year master's and then start in September the next year. So if there are any sort of pending results or final things that are going on with their masters, they're still able to join the firm and, you know, with certain parts completing afterwards. So I hope that helps in terms of timelines, but so far it's not been a problem for our intern to graduate conversions in terms of that master's. As I mentioned, we do sponsor international students. In terms of customer-centric roles and also finance, I'd say for customer-centric roles, look at our customer and innovation roles that we have there. So we've got a range of opportunities across M&G investments, digital marketing, and wealth. So that might be of interest to you if you've got that focus. We don't have a formal scheme in finance, although I know there were a couple of graduates that came in outside of our program. But things might change in the future. But at the moment, it's not part of our formal scheme. There's a question for Ronan. What attracted you to M&G? And most importantly, what keeps you there?
Yeah, again, another really good question. So, I mean, the reason I applied in the first place is M&G's a well-regarded and a good business. So at that time, I didn't have any experience of M&G, but I thought, it's a great business. It's an area that I'm interested in. So, of course, applied and hoped to get there. And one thing that really sold me on the business is when I was going through the application schemes, particularly my interviews in the assessment centres where I finally got to meet people at M&G, I really felt respected, and I really felt there was a line actually on the website. And sometimes when you see these things, you don't really give full credence to it because a lot of places might say it, but it said it was something along the lines of bring your whole self to work, everything you are. And at that time, that was something that really resonated with me because, I mean, there's no surprises. If you've got your screen on, I'm a black boy a black guy I grew up in Northwest London. I've got dreadlocks. So I kind of thought to myself, how will I fit in this industry? Or will I fit in this industry? Will I fit in a firm like this? And I felt really at home when I applied. And that's my honest view of my application experience. So even before I joined, that is what I saw of the people who were interviewing me, who came to chat to us during our assessment centres. So on that, if I could fire back a bit of advice, is that when you are applying to whatever firms you apply, this industry, not this firm or not, use those as a way of interviewing, in a sense, the firm you're going into. Don't ignore things and try and see how people treat you and interact with you, because it's often a telling sign of how that business might be. What keeps me here, I really enjoy my team. I think I've got a great team who are, again, I mentioned a little bit earlier, really keen to see me develop and are really supportive of my personal development. I work on really interesting and challenging work. I think our industry is going through huge amounts of change. Loads of things affecting our industry. Technology, not technology being one, but there's also various other forms. So there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of new challenges. And on that, again, I think what also keeps me here is that I'm encouraged to give my views, to give my opinion, to give my input, even though I'm sort of relatively junior. So that's another tip I'd say going forward. No matter where you are, in what firm, at what level, from day one, you provide value and impact, and that's something worth keeping in your mind. Don't feel like when I hit year 3, I'll be able to give my opinion. Not at all. From day one, you give impact, and firms should help support you in feeling that way. So that's a sort of a separate tip I'd say to keep in mind. But hopefully that answers that question. But no, another good question.
Brilliant, thank you. And for those of you who didn't see my answer earlier about graduate roles for 2022, at the moment we are recruiting for internship only roles, but keep an eye on our website because there may be a couple of graduate roles coming up for our 2022 intake. And also to answer another question, yes, the 2022 intake of interns will be our pipeline for our 2023 intake of graduate roles. In terms of the deadline for applications is on the 31st of October. So do have a look on our website and submit your application if you're interested in being considered for our opportunities. There's a question about military returners, I think. So that's not formally part of the program that we offer, but do have a look on our experienced hire careers page, because there may be some opportunities on there that could be of interest, but nothing formally in terms of sort of military transition roles. But again, have a look and see whether there's anything of interest on our experienced hires careers page. a question about audit and tax work experience. Again, I can't say there's a specific type of work experience that will really put you at advantage, because it's not something that we look at closely. We assess you based on your potential to be successful within that role. So yeah, experience is good, but I wouldn't say it's like the key that's really going to kind of take you to that next level. We've talked about some favorite moments in the company, so we'll kind of go on to the next question. And I've also already answered the question about the 2022 to 23 intake, so that one's covered. Another question for Ronan. So one of our participants would like to know what day-to-day tasks you do on strategy and corporate development.
Yeah, sure. So thanks for the question. So strategy and corporate development, so my team, what we're largely concerned with is supporting the management of our business and the business generally in sort of charting the course for M&G PLC. So do we have the right businesses within our company? Are there business parts of our business we think we don't need any more? These are all hypothetical sort of considerations. Are there markets we should be in? Are there markets we shouldn't be in, et cetera, et cetera? So my role within that day-to-day is I provide a lot of research. So I'll look, for example, at emerging trends and how they may affect us and how we may be able to sort of ride the wave of those to improve our business. I'll also look at our peers and competitors and provide sort of feedback and analysis on what and how our peers and competitors are doing, and provide that analysis back to my team or to sort of the executive and the management of our business. So there's an element of that. There's also, you inevitably get different sort of project work around the business. So corporate development, without spending too much time on it, it involves things that include, for example, mergers and acquisitions. So that would be also within the purview of my team. So say, for example, this is hypothetical, your strategy may be to move into a certain region where you might not have a big presence, and you can do that what's described in a way that's called organically. So you can just hire more people there, build the infrastructure around it, or you can acquire another business. So in those scenarios, that corporate development aspect where you may acquire another business would also sit with my team. So sometimes if we have done any of them, or if we hypothetically do more of them, then I help with sort of the process of making sure those projects go better or run smoothly. So getting people set up on the project in the right way, helping conduct meetings, again doing sort of analysis on peers and competitors within those markets. So there's a few things. I also spend, I guess this is a little bit different to outside of strategy and corporate development, but my day-to-day personally, I work a lot on diversity and inclusion initiatives within the business. So looking at how our business can do more for what I describe as underserved communities. So I'm involved in something called a Race at Work Action Group. So myself and some other colleagues, and I work with Param also on this, is to look at ways that our business can improve the sort of race equity within our business, but also in communities out there as well. So some of the stuff we work with charities that help people from low socioeconomic backgrounds to mentor them. We're looking at ways we can improve how we teach financial literacy to different areas of the business, but also making sure things like hiring practices give people, regardless of background, the most equal opportunity to enter the business. So a variety of things. So I spend quite a bit of my day also on diversity and inclusion initiatives around the business.
Great, thank you, Ronan. A question coming in about online assessments. Any tips for doing the online assessments and criteria to achieving these assessments in order to reach the next stage? I think that there are a lot of practice type assessments available. So if you've got access to those, or you're able to find any sort of practice online assessments, then I would recommend that you do those. I think the key thing for online assessments, really, the biggest question or issues that we have with applicants is technical problems that they come up to with the online assessment. So I think if I was going to give you one tip for completing a successful online assessment, it would be to make sure that you have a really secure internet access, and that you're in a quiet place where you're not going to be disturbed, so you can really concentrate on what the assessment's asking you to do. As I mentioned, the first part is online assessments, and then the second part is video interviews. For those video interviews, you will be asked a question and you'll be given a short time to think about your answer before you actually record your answer back. But I think, if you're thinking about preparing in advance for an assessment, as I mentioned, if you look at your CV or your experiences and things that you've been through in life, I'm sure there are lots of skills that you can derive from those experiences. So making sure that you've got those examples to hand. Don't try and put examples into a question that's not, and then not end up asking it. So I would listen to the questions very carefully and answer them very naturally as well. So be authentic, be the best version of yourself, because that's what we want to see. We want to see who you are and what you want to bring to the organization. Okay. So in terms of applying, if I would apply within our application window, and then you can put details of when your course is completed in the application form, and if we need to discuss anything with you regarding your timelines, then we can get in touch with you directly. So I think just apply if you're interested, and then we can have a follow-on conversation about timelines related to your course. There's a question about culture. Hopefully you've got a good idea of, or like a flavor of, what a culture is like at M&G. We've talked a little bit about how we're currently working in terms of our collaborative spaces, and sort of working remotely. We've got our 4 behaviors, which are our M&G behaviors. So keep it simple, inspire others, deliver results, and what was the 4th one? Keep it simple, inspire others, deliver results, and my mind's gone blank.
Embrace change, maybe?
Embrace change, that's the one. Embrace change. So yeah, it's a great company to work for, and hopefully from Ronan's also conversation around his experience on the graduate scheme and working here, that will also give you a good insight into our culture. Just rattling through the last few questions. Technical knowledge expected from graduates. So some of our roles are a little bit more technical, but again, there are a range of skills that we look for across the board. So look at those job descriptions and what skill requirements it may be. Obviously, within the technology scheme, you'll be looking to build on certain skills, and also within our investment teams, some of the teams might be more analytical, but then we've also got some of our teams that are along research and ESG, which you can apply different skill sets to. So have a look at the job description and have conversations with your assessors as part of the assessment process. One very last quick question. So someone who's graduating from Masters in August 22, so would be able to apply for the current vacancy window. I think, could you email students@mng.com and we'll get back to you on that question. So I think we've been able to get through everything. One last question that we do like to ask everyone before we leave, all one-word answers, please. Can you tell us what you wanted to be when you were growing up? We'd be really curious to hear. So if you could just type in a couple of one-word answers, we'd love to hear that. We are coming to the end now, so we really hope that you've enjoyed getting to know more about M&G and found it useful. Don't forget, applications are open and they close on the 31st of October. Do have a look at our website for further details. If you have any questions, you can email us at students@mng.com. Many people have been asking about recordings. All the sessions are recorded and put on the website after the session. You can register for upcoming sessions. Thank you so much. We are at time. Thank you for attending. It's been great fun, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Para, before you go, what did you want to be when you were younger?
Oh God, I can't remember. What did you want to be?
I think when I was very young and before I realised that I wasn't very good, I wanted to be a footballer, and then maybe I don't know, at one point. But then I'm happy I found what I am now. But I was very intrigued because I'm seeing some really cool answers coming in on the side. Yeah, and I think all these things are also a big part of bringing yourself to work. You know, that you don't have to give any of these up. They can form part of why people are diverse in the businesses they go into. So yeah, cool answers. And but yeah, thank you all for taking the time to join the session. Thank you as well, Parag.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.